And YouTube says that I am live. Gordon Costy, Gordy Canuck, live Monday, or very early Monday morning on the 17th of October, 12:17 a.m. And I did a video yesterday, and I believe my last words in that video were, it's not ending. And further to that point, today, this evening, earlier, I came across an article that jumped out at me. I think it would jump out at just about anyone thinking along the lines that I've been thinking along. And the headline is inflammatory. The nightmare COVID variant that beats our immunity is finally here, written by David Axe. I've shared the Yahoo Canadian news feed. It's written by someone by the name of David Axe, A-X-E. And I'm just going to read the first 3 or 4 paragraphs. And here's what it is saying. A new subvariant of the novel coronavirus called XBB dramatically announced itself earlier this week in Singapore. New COVID-19 cases more than doubled in a day, from 4,700 on Monday to 11,700 on Tuesday. And XBB is almost certainly why. The same subvariant just appeared in Hong Kong, too. A highly mutated descendant of the Omicron variant of the SARS-CoV-2 virus that drove a record wave of infections starting around a year ago. XBB is in many ways the worst form of the virus so far. It's more contagious than any previous variant or subvariant. It also evades the antibodies from monoclonal therapies, potentially rendering a whole category of drugs ineffective as COVID treatments. It is likely the most immune evasive and poses problems for current monoclonal antibody-based treatments and prevention strategy. Amesh Adjila, a public health expert at Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security, said. That's the bad news. The good news is that the new bivalent vaccine booster from Pfizer and Moderna seems to work just fine against XBB, even though the original vaccines are less effective against XBB. They won't prevent all infections and reinfections, but they should significantly reduce the chance of severe infection, potentially leading to hospitalization or death. Quote, even with immune evasive variants, vaccine protection against what matters most, severe disease, remains intact, Adelja said. Same guy from Johns Hopkins I quoted earlier. I love these articles. I'm going to stop reading it there. The link is down below if you want to read it yourself. But I love how they won't prevent all infections and reinfections, but they should significantly reduce the chance of severe infection, potentially leading to hospitalization. I love words like should and may and could and perhaps and suggests. All these, I refer to them as wiggle words. So we never said that they would, that they never said that this new bivalent vaccine, they didn't say it will work. We never said it, it was promised to work. All we said was it should. It's like saying, well, the Maple Leafs should make the playoffs this year, or the Maple Leafs should advance to the next round this year, or the Toronto Blue Jays should defeat the Seattle Mariners in the first round of the Major League Baseball playoffs. Wonderful words. They sound encouraging. They sound nice, but they're meaningless. They have no basis in fact. They're crystal ball gazing. But more important than this new subvariant, which, what have we gone through? Delta, Omicron, BA5, BA12, all these. Now it's XBB. And I want to go back to the beginning, near the beginning. because when I said yesterday that this isn't ending, I wasn't talking about COVID or monkeypox or whatever. There's something bigger at play here. And this is something that may have been missed or may have been forgotten. Some will likely remember it. Justin Trudeau, Canada's Prime Minister, gave a speech by video conference to the UN back in September of 2020. So before we headed into, after we got through that horrible first summer of COVID with these lockdowns and people being forced out of their jobs, out of their businesses, and all kinds of, people being told not to leave their houses, for goodness sakes, until there was a politically woke protest event. And then, well, then it's okay. The insanity that we went through then. So in September of 2020, Trudeau gave an address to the UN, and I'm going to play the relevant section from his address. And it's, if you want to look it up, just type in Trudeau, UN, and reset. And it'll be the first one that comes up. It's on Canada's Global News. And here it is. If you're ready, I'm just playing it's about a 20-second clip of, sorry to say, Justin Trudeau.
6 months have laid bare fundamental gaps and inequities within our society.
Okay, I don't have the right timestamp. Just 1 second. There it is.
Is essential. This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset. This is our chance to accelerate our pre-pandemic efforts to reimagine economic systems that actually address global challenges like extreme poverty, inequality, and climate change. Last week, our government committed.
That was the bit I wanted to play, and I actually wrote it out. This pandemic, this is Justin Trudeau talking to the United Nations in September of 2020. This pandemic has provided an opportunity for a reset. This is our chance to accelerate our pre-pandemic effort to reimagine economic systems that actually address global challenges like extreme poverty, inequality, and climate change. This is our chance, our chance. He doesn't enumerate who our is, although I would submit that it's likely and almost definitively his pals with the World Economic Forum. And there's a book that was written by Klaus Schwab, the head of the founder of the World Economic Forum, and its chief top dog. And the book is called The Great Reset. He also wrote another one called The Fourth Industrial Revolution. And I would invite you to check out Klaus Schwab's top advisor, gentleman by, and I use that term loosely, a man by the name of Yuval Noah Harari. Yuval is Y-U-V-A-L, Noah, like Noah's Ark. And I'm not sure how you spell Harari, but you can find all kinds of videos with this guy talking about the fact that humanity, we have to accept the fact that humanity, as we have believed it to exist up until this point, has now fundamentally changed. We are no longer the idea of inalienable God-given rights, our history, that now human beings should be viewed as nothing more than hackable organisms, and that we've entered the age of the surveillance state. It's very Orwellian, very Brave New World, what is the ideas being put forth by this World Economic Forum and their top players. And Trudeau's just a little puppet dancing on a string. But I have no doubt he chose his words very carefully. or whoever was scripting what he was reading to the United Nations. This isn't a horrible thing, COVID. This is our opportunity. And lots of people believe you make your opportunities. They don't occur by accident. At the beginning of COVID, you were not allowed to suggest that it came out, that it was a man-made virus that was created in a lab in Wuhan, China. That was strictly verboten. If you said that, you were deplatformed, censored, and slandered. Even happened to Dr. Luc Montagnier, a Nobel Prize winning virologist from France. He was, all of a sudden, his Nobel Prize came out of a Cracker Jack box and he was labeled a quack. Even in academic circles, that SARS-CoV-2 is not a naturally occurring virus, that it resulted from so-called gain-of-function research. They took a bat coronavirus and that they juiced it up to make it more transmissible and more contagious in the human population. So what is the agenda? What is the agenda? Trudeau talks about our pre-pandemic effort to reimagine economic systems. We live in an economic system in Canada and the US and most of the Western world. We have market-driven economies. And ostensibly what that means is you as an individual, a group, or a business, you go into the marketplace with your product or service, and there are laws and there are statutes that you have to, it has to be a legal business, but as long as you're not in violation of any of the laws, you take your product or your service into the marketplace. If that product or service is valued by the marketplace, they buy it, your business succeeds. If you go into the market with a product or a service that the market doesn't value and they don't buy it, your business fails. And that's a market-driven economy. And it is believed by many that it's capitalism at its core and that it's destroying the planet. And that we need to fundamentally reimagine our economic systems because it's destroying the planet. So when you're seeing fertilizer costs, fertilizers being rationed in places like Netherlands and Canada, and diesel fuel costs going up, and basically hammering our agricultural sector, take pause. When you read about countless food warehousing and production facilities all of a sudden catching fire, take pause, pay attention, because this is what is ultimately driving everything. There's a move afoot to fundamentally alter the way in which the world operates and functions. And we are moving into an era of fascism, communism. Fascism and communism are somewhat seen as being at the polar extremes of the political spectrum. Socialism, communism being on the extreme far left, fascism being on the extreme far right. But the simple fact of the matter is, when the political spectrum isn't linear, it's more circular, and fascism and communism meet at the juncture of Dictatorship Boulevard. And who cares whether it's fascist, whether it's communist? Ultimately, what it means is authoritarian dictatorship, where human rights, and this is where I bring in this Yuval Noah Harari with his talk about humanity, of us being nothing more than hackable organisms. There's talk of biodigital convergence, sometimes referred to as transhumanism. We're still in the very early stages of a revolution. We've had you've heard of maybe Alvin Toffler He referred to it as waves. The first wave was the agricultural wave. Then we had the industrial wave, or the Industrial Revolution. And anthropologists talk about this in terms of how we went from being, they say we were hunters and gatherers, and that was humanity at its earliest incarnation. And then we moved to agricultural based societies that became more fixed. We were no longer nomadic, hunting and gathering and moving around. And then from there, we went into this industrial age. And now this Klaus Schwab has written a book called The Fourth Industrial Revolution. And it's talking about ushering in the so-called transhumanist or biodigital age. And that's where humanity and the digital world converge, and we become little more than machines. And if this doesn't concern you, I would submit that it should. Maybe if you're, the 1/10 of 1% of the population, the uber rich, wealthy, powerful with the money, power, and influence, who thinks that you will be, overseeing this new world order that's being ushered in. But there's something called crisis management, and there are those who believe, and I'm one of them, that to bring about radical change, societal level change, you need a crisis. And if a crisis isn't available, you manufacture one. And what we saw with COVID is we saw what, at the end of the day, if you go to the Ontario Ministry of Health, it's Ontario Public Health, they produce what are called enhanced epidemiological studies or surveys, and they would list the mortality rate for COVID by age group. And if you're under the age of 40, your recovery rate was better than 99.9%. Even at my age, I'm just on the happy side of 60, it was still better than 99%. And if you got to 80 plus year olds, people who are already at the end of natural life expectancy in Canada, Canadians live on average to be about 83 years of age. Women a little longer, men a little less, but it's right around 83. So once you're 80 plus, you're already at the end of natural life expectancy. And according to Public Health Ontario, even for the people at the end of natural life expectancy, the recovery rate from COVID was still over 92%. We're talking about a virus that disproportionately was serious and potentially fatal for the elderly, the sick, and the dying. And it was weaponized. And for the first time in history, anyone who died with a positive test, their death was chalked up into the COVID column to goose the numbers and scare people. And it worked. It worked on steroids, because everyone loves quoting the death figures. I would invite you to look, just Google. You can still find it on Google. Denver, Colorado. Coroner was complaining about the fact that she was forced to include murder-suicide. 2 people died of gunshot wounds, and they had to be included with COVID deaths because they had a positive PCR test within a certain prescribed time frame, so they were counted as COVID. There was a kid in Tallahassee, Florida, who died in a motorcycle crash, and he was counted as a COVID death. And Toronto's Public Health Department put out a tweet from their official Twitter account laying that bare and saying that anyone who died with a positive COVID test, whether they died of COVID or not, their death would count with COVID numbers. So it elevated the numbers. If you looked, I think it was 2018, 2019, Canada experienced 8,511 deaths due to influenza. But those were influenza deaths. We never treated influenza the way we treated COVID. We never tested the entire Canadian population 2 and 3 times over. We've done double as many tests as we have people in this country. The United States has done over 1 billion tests. It's basically each American on average has been tested 3 times over a 2+ year period. Never in history. And then everyone who dies with a positive test gets chucked into the COVID column, and it gooses the numbers, and it creates an impression of a crisis, a health crisis, and that warranted telling people to stay, lock yourself in your house and don't go outside, and the insanity that we lived through. And now you're seeing, and everything was geared toward getting people to roll up their sleeves and to accept an injection that was not properly tested, that was not properly developed. I said it in my last video. The trial process for approving a drug, for determining that a drug is actually safe and effective, is long, slow, and meticulous. And the reason for that is safety. You cannot rush things through at warp speed. When you do that, you get things like thalidomide, you get things like Bextra, you get things like the mRNA jabs that people are getting. And the vector shots, because we saw it with AstraZeneca. They use a vector platform, which is another platform that had never been approved for, no authorized product had ever come out with a vector platform before. And all the jabs, all of them, whether mRNA, vector, or otherwise, they are all narrowly focused on one thing, this toxic spike protein on the surface of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And it is the most unstable, perhaps. It's an incredibly unstable part. It mutates like crazy. And if everything I've read from vaccinologists is that when you're creating a vaccine, you want to target the most stable component of a virus, not one of its least stable components, because it'll render your vaccine useless. And how many people do you see now who have had 2, 3, 4, 5 shots, and they're getting sick with the very disease they were supposed to have been immunized against? So again, just getting back to the point, it's not ending. I hope it is, but I will be very surprised. And I'm actually somewhat, bring it on, because I think more and more people are starting to wake up to the fact that they have been lied to, they have been manipulated, they have been. Bill Maher, who I don't care for one way or the other, he's a comedian, he has a TV show, but he early on labeled it panic porn, and that was a very apt description. And people have woken up to the fact that this has been theater. This has been panic porn. Masks are theater. They were never designed to stop a viral pathogen, ever. These were designed to keep spit from falling into an open gaping wound in an operating theater, and to keep bodily spray from splashing OR staff in the mouth. That's what these stupid things were designed for. They were not designed to stop viral pathogens. And now they're talking about the potential in Ontario that they're going to be mandating them again. And I'm praying that a significant percentage of the population doesn't get scared beyond the point where they can no longer think critically. Their rational mind shuts down, because that's what fear does. Fear robs the higher thought processes, and people just fight or flight. And this is flight. I'm scared. The virus is going to kill me. Before COVID came along, there were deadly viruses. This was the first virus ever that had a marketing campaign behind it, the deadly coronavirus. It's called a branding statement in marketing. And it's influenza can be deadly, RSV can be deadly, streptococcus can be deadly, gastrointestinal bugs can be deadly. Anything can be deadly. But don't succumb to the panic porn. I'm convinced it's coming. I don't know how quick, but we're entering that time of year when we're entering that time of year when bugs, viral bugs and infections spike. And it happens every year at this time. And this year, I don't see any reason why it would be any different. It's normal, standard procedure. Ontario hospitals throughout the world get slammed during the flu season. And in terms of the jabs, this is the first. Imagine, if you will, you're a right-wing person and you get accused of being a racist because you don't like something Barack Obama said. Or on the flip side, if you're left-wing and you don't like what Candace Owens has to say, well then, are you anti-Black? Or are you allowed to discern? Are you allowed to say, you know what? I like what one says, but not the other, without you equating to be a racist. You know, if you don't want to drive around in a specific type of vehicle, does that make you anti-car? Unfortunately, the world has become so polarized that it's an all or nothing. We live in an all or nothing type of world. Probably the best example might be Donald Trump in the United States. Now, myself personally, do I like Donald Trump? No, I don't. What he said, one of the Bushes about, grab him by the, and all that, the man is disgusting. However, with that being said, does that mean everything he did was bad? The U.S. didn't start during his 4 years as president. There was no military engagements. The U.S. didn't have any, nothing. They didn't go after Grenada or Panama or Somalia or Iraq or Syria or anywhere. The U.S. had a relatively, for their history, incredibly, it was the first time in generations the U.S. didn't engage in a war of some description. That's a positive thing. You may disagree with how it was achieved, but the U.S. economy was roaring. Is that a bad thing? Trump, you're allowed to discern. You're allowed to say, I like this part about him, but I don't like that about him. And likewise, the reason I'm making this point is with vaccines. Just because you don't want the COVID vaccine because they didn't do the proper studying on it doesn't mean you're anti-vax. You can be, you can have, I shared it in my last video. Don't know where, here it is. I've had them all. I've had tetanus, polio, measles, hepatitis, I've had all these shots. Complete. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are all post 40. How many people over the age of 40 have had 5 inoculations and then get called anti-vax because they don't want to take one specific vaccine that, rather than being properly developed, rather than going through the proper phase 1, phase 2, and then phase 3 separate trials, and the proper protocols being followed, doesn't want to take a shot because it was rushed through in months when it should take 10 years. There's nothing wrong with that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It doesn't mean I'm a racist. It doesn't mean I'm a misogynist. It doesn't mean I hold unacceptable views. That was branding. That was marketing. That was a sales job to try and get people to take it by saying, well, if you don't take it, you're anti-vax. So go to flip off. Saying no to this specific Vaccine does not make anyone anti-vax. It makes them discerning. It makes them, okay, yeah, discriminating. Won't take just anything. I'm not just going to, this world has gone absolutely batshit crazy. Pardon my swearing. I don't like to swear. Anyway, I've rambled on enough. It's over 30 minutes, just over. God bless. Stay strong. If you haven't taken the jabs, the COVID jabs, even if you haven't taken any of the others, I don't care. But I mean, if you haven't taken the COVID jabs, you're not anti-vax. Necessarily, you might be, but chances are you're not. Chances are you just didn't want that one specific one. And there's ample good reason for deciding against it. And now we have a new scary variant, maybe XBB, coming out. And they're going to use that potentially to try and ramp up the panic porn again and to get people hating on each other and drop it. We need to come together. We need to stay strong. And we have to realize that this isn't about a virus. This isn't, there is a bigger agenda at play, far bigger. I can't enumerate it well enough. I'm speaking just off the cuff, and no one's engaging with me. It helps if I get some dialogue going, helps focus my thoughts a little more. Maybe another night that'll happen. Anyway, good night. God bless.